Welcome back to Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. I'm so elated to do this episode because it talks about the part or the best part of me, Mother's Day. One of the greatest joys that I've had in my life is to become a mother. I can't say that I was this quote unquote perfected mother, but I can say I was very present mother. But I also can say I made some mistakes as a mother. Oftentimes, there's so much pressure on women to be this picturesque mother, a mother that cleans and takes care and nurtures and provides for everybody that's worn out and beaten up and broken, but always has a smile on their faces. Oftentimes, mothers are being told that they have to look picture perfect. They have to make sure the house is always clean and cook the best meals and all of those different things, but not taking into consideration that before she was a mother, she was a woman. Before she was a woman, she was a girl. And that girl grown into a woman that becomes a mother may have traveled some journeys that have dictated how she becomes a mother. You see, as a girl child, we are often told that we need to make sure we provide a happy home and a safe environment for men and nurture our children and partake in making sure the household runs, but we're never told to stop and take care of ourselves. We're never told that others are going to take care of us, that we should expect that we have to carve out some time when we're tired to focus on what everybody else's needs are, that we have to fight through our sicknesses just to make sure everybody else represents us well when they're in public. But mothers get a bad rap. I'm going to start from my perspective as mothers, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about mothers that I have encountered throughout time, and maybe even some of the things that I've seen with family members as mothers. For me, as a young girl, most of you all know my story that I suffered molestation, went through rape. Yeah, a lot of women. A lot of girls are sexually abused very early in their life, and they have to hold that within their bodies. They have to keep smiling, keep, in my instance, playing basketball or sports and just different things like that, and keeping that face on, keeping your grades up, just go throughout life. Some, it causes a major mental impact where they just don't function well anymore and they still get taken advantage of, and they subsequently may become mothers from a space of trauma and pain. We'll come back to that. My journey to motherhood, although my girl's life, my childhood, my little girl inside of me suffered through molestation and child abuse, there are some set standards of wisdom that I came to this earth with that helped to guide me through the process of just life in general. As I journeyed through and got pregnant the first time, um, whew, as a teenager. Um, that pregnancy ended in divorce. In abortion. Sorry. That pregnancy ended in abortion. I was a teen. I had been assaulted. Um, and I was also sexually active. So I was taken to a clinic and had an abortion, and the abortion failed in a sense because I had to go back and have a second procedure after almost losing my life because portions of that child still stayed inside of me, causing me to be extremely sick and close to sepsis. Horrible, horrible time for a teenager to go through and never really talking about what that implication was on their life, how they were to survive that process, not having conversations, not checking anything, but just kind of giving this black list of who you were No one asked situations or circumstances because everybody just figured that girls are fast. That's not necessarily true. But as I fast forward and moved on into college and was assaulted in college as well, and then was kind of stalked by someone and ended up caving into that stalking, subsequently getting pregnant. Um, my entire pregnancy was wrapped with, is God going to punish me for the abortion? So all of these things were coming into play that I was passing through the womb to my child as I was preparing to be a mother. I recall going into labor and saying, I don't know if I want to do this because I'm pretty selfish. I want life to be about me. But the moment that little person jumped out of my body, I no longer considered me. I considered how can I best protect him in every aspect of his life. And so from there, I continued life. 2 years later, after being involved with someone for a year and a half, got pregnant, had my daughter, and yet I was still left in a single parent situation. So, as a single parent, I had to bite the bullet on who is Marcia. I had to put Marcia on the back burner because two little people had come through my womb that needed me. They needed me to show up in ways that I had not experienced. They needed me to show up in a manner of being present, of being thoughtful, of being considerate, of expressing love and acceptance of who they were to help build them to be the absolute best people that they could become. But let me backtrack just a few minutes. In the midst of surviving the abortion, I was blessed to become the godmother to my oldest baby. She has traveled and helped me to mature at 15 into who I am now at 56 and a few months shy of 57. Her gifting to this planet coming through to me saved me. It saved all of who I am because I didn't have time to fall down to the stressors and to the grief that's associated with a loss of a child, regardless of how you lose a child, whether it's by spontaneous acts of the child's life being lost or abortion or any other termination process. It still clings to who you are. So that child helped me to bridge over and to learn how to love through a different set of eyes, a set of eyes that had offered who they are to this little person that still, she kind of looks up at me now, or to me now, even though she's tiny. She mentally and spiritually looks up to me. She don't give me about that part. Fast forward to the last child being born. Um, Ended up being a single parent, which I definitely didn't want to be a single parent because my mother was a single parent and I watched that struggle. I watched how she had to sacrifice so much. I watched her wear tattered underwear to make sure that we had clothing and we had food and things of that nature. And I didn't want that for myself and I didn't want that for my children. Thankfully, it never got to the tattered undergarments and things of that nature, but I went through some tough times. And I am the first to say I've been very apologetic to my children because as I look back, and I often do a lot of self assessments, but as I look back to my time as a parent, I recognize I was mean, I was strict, I was projecting all of the things that were unhealed in me. I projected onto my children my fears of people touching them and being left alone, being called a bad mother, all of those things I projected on them. I didn't handle a lot of their sensitive situations in an appropriate manner where it was nurturing and nourishing. I threatened them with, you better take care of each other because that's all you have. And that set a whole different set of standards that they found themselves in a tough space when they would have fallouts. All they would hear was the ringing of my words, and it created burdens as well for them, which wasn't fair. Listen, parenting doesn't come with a book. I don't care that Dr. Spock wrote books years ago to, talk about how to be a parent. He was never a mother. He never birthed a baby. He never understood the umbilical cord, that process. It's so easy for people to say, well, you're a mother, you're supposed to do this and that and another. Well, are you a mother? Before you're passing this judgment on, are you a mother? Have you challenged your body to push another life into existence? What part of that do you understand? The sacrifice of it all to become a mother it's a gift, but it also can be a burden at times because you never fully get the opportunity in your younger years, if you have children early in your younger years, to discover who you are. You go from being somebody's daughter, maybe sister or sibling, maybe an only child, to being somebody's mama. But you never get the opportunity in those younger years to be yourself. So you're just expected to flow in this space, to learn how to rob Peter and to pay Paul, to learn how to cook meals. I always say that in those younger years, when I was making $12,000 and $13,000 a year, I could pull meals out of air. I remember being told, no, you can't get food stamps. You make this much money over poverty level. But it wasn't enough to really sustain. So what do you have to do? You go get a second job. You do what you needed to do in order for your children to have. Now I get it. There are some individuals that have birthed children and they're still mothers. They came through the womb, but they may not always have that sacrifice idea of being a parent. They may not always choose to put their children first and they put themselves first, which ends up with children who wrestle with their own value. They wrestle with their worth because their fight is, if my mama couldn't love me, why would anybody else? That's a hard chip to take on. As a mother, it is encouraged to find out who you are. I remember when my son went into the Marine Corps and he was stationed in Afghanistan, and it was just me and baby girl. And he called home and she said excitedly to him, "You'll never believe this. Your mama bought a pair of shoes, a nice pair of tennis shoes." And I just gasped at it because what message was I sending to her and my children about my sacrifice? There was no balance. They didn't see that balance of sacrifice and then take care of yourself. They saw me working two jobs. They saw me working two jobs and going to school full time. They saw me doing everything that I needed to do to hustle this life and try to make it better for them. As we think back, and I laugh with them now about when they played all these different sports, and I even coached and played and things like that. And I kept saying, man, now for $13,000, I don't know where the money kept coming from to make sure that they were in the midst of everything. I remember sending them on field trips to places I had never been and hadn't really been, right? Making sure that their junior proms and their middle school experiences were great. Their high school experiences was as great as I could make it be for them. And in the back of my head, it kept singing out, well, who are you, Marcia? Mothers often don't know who they are outside of what everyone else is telling them. One of my biggest fights, one of my biggest defenses is if anyone ever said I was a bad mother, because I knew the sacrifices that I had made. I knew how I had overcome a lot of situations that I've yet to even talk about. I knew how I sacrificed to make sure that when fathers didn't come through, they failed to uphold promises to my kids, I made it happen. Oftentimes we would get into it because I was the parent that stayed, and I would oftentimes not be given the same level of ideological respect because the idea was, you're still here. So I need to act in this manner towards this parent. And my mother taught me That I didn't need to down talk their fathers to make me look better. Time would tell. Time would show. So if I would encourage young mothers, especially single mothers, anything, don't go back and forth with your children's father about who they are. The children will see. They will see. Your balance as a mother is going to be the epitome of how well your children grow to become, how they're able to speak their voices, how they're able to receive support, how they're able to see you as a person along with being their mother. How do you see yourself as a mother? What are you judging? What are your criteria that you use to say that you are a mother? Well, for me, my criteria for being the best mother that I knew to be was being present. How could I be present in their lives, make them feel like they had value, make them feel like they have worth, make them understand the importance of who they are? How could I put that into a place where I would balance things as much as possible? There were days where it was quite difficult to balance things out. There were days that I had to make sure that they had something to eat and I would go to bed hungry. There were days where I would be stressed about if the lights were going to be cut off, if I was going to have enough money for rent and just different things of that nature. Will I have enough money to take care of all of their needs? Who do I need to ask? I don't want to ask. All of those different things wrestling. What was my sacrifice for asking for help? I remember going to child support court, such a flub, because nothing really came of that. In fact, the judge scolded me because I said I'm tired of coming back and forth to this court and nothing being rewarded or awarded. Drop the cases. And she said, you young black girls, you just don't understand. Don't drop this case. And it's like, I'm tired. I just finished a conference called Black Women Aren't Angry, We're Tired. We're tired. We're tired of trying to prove that we could be the best mother that we could be. We're tired of always sacrificing and not being heard, not being supported. We're tired. And so, as a mother, you really don't get the permission to be tired because society will then deem you a bad mother. So, when you change what your criteria is as a mother to focus on first, who am I? Who am I? I know my name is Marcia. I know that I am female. I know that I'm heterosexual. I know that I'm a therapist. I know that I'm a mother, a sister, a daughter. I know all those things about me, but who was I actually? Well, for me, and this is just Marcia's definer, I really want you all to define this for yourself. But for me, as a mother, as a woman first, I was strong and resilient because I had to be. I was filled with wisdom because I was chosen by the Creator to walk in places of wisdom and resilience and love and nurturing and understanding. I'm an empath because of the level of empathy in who I am. I am the epitome of the voice of authenticity. I've learned throughout this life, a lot of my struggles came because I didn't know how to be fake. I was going to be authentic one way or the other. I was going to tell you your truth and my truth too. And I was going to stand on all of those things within its truth because I had to learn that I am my biggest hero. I wasn't expecting anyone to come in on a white horse to determine if I was going to be my best self or how to be my best self. I had to make that determination for myself. I had to be the hero in my life and hopefully in my children's lives. They never had to sleep on the street. They never had to go without a meal. It may not have been the meal that they wanted, but they never had to go without a meal. They never went without clothes. They never went out without a roof over their head. There were times, though, that they went without peace. I caved in to the idea that I had to be married. So I entered two horrible marriages. The first one was pushed upon me because the church said that I needed to be married in order to do what my calling was on my life. And the person that I married was a crack addict that everybody in the church knew about except for Marcia. That ultimately resulted in some violent behavior and actions that could have ruined my life. And even in that moment, I had to stop and think, who's going to take care of my children? Nobody can parent my children or love my children the way that I love my children. Who's going to cover them? Who's going to make sure that they're balanced? Who's going to hear words of encouragement? Who's going to lift them up when they're down? Who's going to raise their heads when they feel at their lowest states? I had to keep fighting through that process. Thankfully, the officers and the court appointed individuals saw who I was, and I did no time for the result of the violent behavior because of the attempts to strangle me and me fighting back. There were a lot of wounds, close to life, close to death, but in the midst of it all, I had to learn how to delve deeper into the strength of who I am in order to be the mother that I was. My kids were always going to come first. That was my choice. I realized that there are some mothers who don't put their children first. They put themselves first. I can't knock that one way or the other. All I can talk about is the journey to motherhood. It can be tough as a single parent. You then want the best. You believe the hype of a two-parent household. I've seen some horrible kids come out of two-parent households because within those households there was no peace. I've seen some great kids come out of single-parent households. So you can't judge it based on the parental structure, in my opinion. You have to base on the essence of what's happening in the household. You have to be able to create situations where people can find peace in a household. My second marriage, again, based on the church, believing that I just had to be married someone that had a vision or somewhat of a vision, but didn't want to put the work in the vision. Um, Ultimately, I had to make a decision that I got to get out of this. I had to get out of that when my children were told that that's my wife, you can't hug on her. No, that's foolishness. Because I've always been a hugger with my children because I didn't get a lot of hugs as a child. I've always been emotionally present with my children. And I would not dare allow a man to make my children feel isolated from me. I was their protector. I had to protect them. And as I move forward throughout this life, I'm still very much a mother as a protector. I'm there to be present for my children. I can say yes, still working on a lot of those no's that I need to be saying, but they know that in the end, I got their back. But I had to go back and find me as a person. And that is the message that I want everyone to get as mothers coming into this Mother Day. Find out who you are. Find out why you find yourself angry. Find out why you find yourself disappointed and depressed and sad and regretting of your role as a mother. Find out why you are not where you want to be and the sacrifices that you've made. Get back to know who you are. Ask yourself a few questions. Who was I created to be outside of all of my labels? Do I know that creative side of me? Have I allowed my true self to come forward? Am I still trying to meet the demands of societal expectations? Have I honored the truth in who I am? Have I moved into a space of seeing me first? Not seeing you first in a manner of selfishness, ignoring your responsibilities as a parent, but seeing you first as a human, making sure that you are good, making sure that your needs are met. Because the truth is, when you sacrifice everything for everybody, there's nothing left for you. It goes back to the safety expectation on the airplanes when they do their safety briefing. When the oxygen masks come down, you got to put it on yourself first. If you don't put it on yourself first, where does that actually leave you? It pretty much leaves you in burnout. When you see mothers in stores yelling and cursing at their children, one or two things is occurring. They were either raised in an environment where there was a lot of yelling, cursing, and bullying, or they are just mentally, physically, and financially exhausted that the only way to express themselves is through a yell. Instead of judging mothers for where they are, why not offer help? Why not offer suggestions? Why not offer support? A lot of times, mothers, even in marriages, mothers are the mainstay. They are the go to mommy this, mommy that, mommy, huh? And no one is saying, let me cut you some slack today. I'll take over. I'll step into the place and in the roles of what it is that you do so that you can be seen, you can be free for a moment. As a mother, it's vitally important for you to find ways to rebalance, for you to find ways to restructure how you move in life so you're not breaching burnout. When burnout occurs, mental and physical abuse can occur. You begin to say things such as, you just like your daddy. You ain't never going to be nothing. All of those kind of things. That's burnout. And that's not fair to your child. We made choices when we got pregnant to go ahead and bring these lives here. In that choice became a lot of responsibility of not just having this baby doll that you wanted to dress up and seeing on all these different social media platforms of the kids being cute and they doing all these dances and things of that nature. Mothering, parenting is far more than that. The ultimate goal of a parent is to help create an individual that is conscious of their decisions, their actions, their responses, being their absolute best self, honoring and knowing who they are and all that they do, being supportive, being nurturing. But if you haven't been supportive to yourself, if you haven't nurtured yourself, if you haven't trusted yourself with you, your children are going to be a representation of that burnout. So when you get angry at the children, stop for a moment and ask yourself, am I angry with myself for what I see going on? How can I change the situation to help guide them into a better place? What was my raising like? How much of my childhood am I bringing into the lives of my children? I often tell people the part of your childhood that you despise the most, you emulate if you don't heal from it. If you hated not feeling loved and not feeling supported, or your mother talked down to you, and things of that nature, that could very well be passed on to your children. And you may not see it in the moment because the behavior is so familiar. You have to decide the things that you despise as a child from your mother. And I'm just doing this on mother's side because it's Mother's Day. The things that you despised as a mother, you have to decide, do I want to carry that on? Several things that I knew that I didn't want to carry on from my mother, and I love her dearly, but I did not want to carry on absenteeism. And when I mean absenteeism, my mother was very present to provide all of our basic fundamental needs: food, clothing, shelter, finances, things of that nature. My mother worked so hard as a little girl, being on a oldest child to sharecroppers. All she knew was to work and make things happen. The emotionalism, the nurturing, and things of that nature came in a different form. But I decided very early that I wanted my children to feel hugged, to be shown love, and to have an open door of communication. So that's what I chose. I chose the opposite route. I never made my children feel like be seen and not heard or things of that nature because I think that's abuse. I think that's mental abuse to tell children just be sit over there in the corner and be seen and not heard. Well, they're still human, right? They still have some form of opinion. Delivering that opinion respectfully, of course, is the right route to go, but still giving them a safe space to be able to say, I don't like this. I remember when my youngest, I was angry, I was exhausted, working two jobs, going to school, and I was just yelling and cursing, just mad. And that child looked at me and said, I want my mama back. I want the mama back that is calm. I want the mama back that is not yelling and cussing and fussing. I want the mama back that makes me feel safe. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I had become intentional again with what were my words doing and saying to my children? How am I impacting what their future needs to look like? How am I showing up for them? What are they seeing? What are they going to mirror? As a mother, you're a woman first. As a woman, you are a child first. I often encourage people go back into your childhood and look and see how your childhood shaped your parenting model, how your childhood left some gaps. Because we all leave gaps. Listen, I'm not one to sit here and say that, there's a perfect mother. There's no such thing as a perfect mother because how do we compare perfection? How do we know what perfect is? Because we're all raised in different environments by different people. I say, even with the flaws that I believe that came out of my childhood and adulthood with lack of support and lack of nurturing, I still had the best damn mother in the world. Bottom line, still had the best one for me. And everybody else that feels their way about their mother can say the same thing. But the truth is in that process, as a mother, as a woman, and as a child, you have to go back and identify what is shaping your ideal as a mother. What are the things that you need to pluck out now that you are aware that's not necessarily healthy in your stage of being a mother? What areas do you need to go through your own healing in order to sustain yourself as a woman and as a mother? Here are your takeaways. Here are your challenges. Find out who you are as a person first. And if who you are is not emulated as the mother that you are, you probably need to work on some things to change. But at the same vein, celebrate who you are as a mother. Get out of the space of negative talking, of bashing who you are, sabotaging. Especially to single mothers who are really doing it on their own, I really want to encourage you and remind you that you have value, that you are powerful. You make things happen when it seems as if nothing can happen. You make moves that people didn't expect you to survive. You're doing it. You're being the best that you can be in this moment. If there are things that are not allowing you to be your best self, go ahead and tap into that. You deserve that for you. You deserve the same happiness that you want to see on your children. You deserve the same peace. Tap into that. And I just want to say happy Mother's Day. Tell your children your story. Let them understand what you've gone through at this point in your life to become their mother. They may have a different perspective and outlook on their relationship with you. You'll be surprised how important it is for you to share with your children who you are so that they can know, understand, and respect the person that they call mama. Happy Mother's Day. Enjoy this day and let them kids do something for you. Take good care until the next episode of Authentically Peculiar with Marcia.